In terms of reflecting on this course overall, I would say that this course has definitely made a significant impact on my own leadership development. And I also believe that my takeaways from this course are going to continue to make a significant impact on not only my leadership development, but myself as a classroom teacher and just an educator in general. There are a lot of takeaways that I have definitely, I would say, have made a perspective shift in terms of how I view certain things. For example, my own development in being a leader. When I first took this course, I didn't take it to be a leader or an administrator in my school system. I truly thought that a leadership course would just help me in the classroom. And yes, I definitely took a lot of takeaways away from the course that I think are going to make me a more effective classroom teacher. So that goal in mind at the beginning of the course, I feel has come to fruition. But also, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit in terms of the leadership opportunities that I may have throughout my career. I don't necessarily have to just dive into an administrative role. I don't know if that's something that I want to do in my future or not. I'm only going into my second year as a math science teacher, and that's not something I foresee in the next 5 years. I'm just really I'm focusing more so on developing my own skills as a classroom teacher, and figuring out what works for me and the philosophy that I want to uphold for myself as a classroom teacher and going forward, and also develop the skills within myself that are going to benefit my students the most. One of the takeaways from the course, in terms of my leadership style, I would say was when we learned about the different leadership styles, and I was taken aback by the transformational leader, because they're the type of leader that inspires change and promotes ongoing learning. And I want to be a classroom teacher that inspires change. I don't want my students to feel like there's a certain way to do things and that I expect them to only do it that way. I want them to know that their abilities are valued, their ideas are valued, and all of the different backgrounds that we all come into the classroom with all have value, and that we all have something to contribute to the conversation and the learning environment. And this is something that I want my students to know and understand. And by modeling certain behavior and valuing their contributions, I think that I can potentially establish this type of atmosphere, which is really exciting. So the leadership style, I think, has made a little bit of an impact on how I plan to approach the classroom environment a little bit differently. And I also feel like, just being a classroom teacher, we have a unique opportunity. As a classroom teacher, we have the advantage of basically creating our own little organization. There are, of course, outside pressures that we have to abide by, and certain expectations that we need to meet. But with that aside, we do have a great deal of autonomy, and how I run things in my classroom, and what I want to value, and what I want my students to develop, and that hidden curriculum, these are all choices that I get to make. And being an effective leader is essential in making these choices so that they benefit my students the most. And I think that this course has given me the confidence as a leader, and has empowered me with some skills that I think I can be a better classroom teacher, because ultimately all classroom teachers are leaders. They're leaders in their own classroom. Now, ways that I strive to improve in terms of my leadership development. Number one, I don't want this course to just end and that door close and me move forward. Number one, I am more aware of the components of the course that can help me be a better leader in my classroom, and also the components of the course that are going to change the way that I approach my students in terms of what I want them to develop. So, one of the things that I want to implement in my classroom that I never really thought of before is just providing opportunities for my students for their own leadership development. Leadership is something that it can boost self-esteem, and help students to discover abilities that perhaps they didn't even realize that they had. And being a teenager is such a fragile time in their lives when they're determining who they are, who they want to be, what values matter to them, and the causes that they want to stand for. And if I can give them leadership opportunities and boost their confidence and give them a voice in my classroom, then maybe that will give them the skills that they need to take with them outside of my classroom and make change elsewhere and make the world a better place with those skills. So these are skills that I want my students to develop. So for example, teaching in my classroom. I am the teacher, but every single one of my students can also be teachers. And having the ability to teach another person something is something that I think is an important skill for a leader. Having good communication skills as well, and problem-solving abilities, and modeling good problem solving. So exploring what is involved in problem solving. When a teacher showed, like in a math classroom, for example, when I show at the top, if I show an example on how to do something, if I just jump straight to the answer, the students assume that if there's a question, they either know the answer or they don't. And if I jump straight to an answer, that's a disservice to my students. And this is something I'm mindful of. And I want to really take a step back and allow my students to more often see the development of that problem solving. So what does it entail? If I just answer the question right away, they don't see all of the hard work that went into answering that question and the years of practice and study that was involved in answering that question. So I want my students to be able to see that problem solving is a process, and it's a process that we can all develop and we can all get better at. And you don't have to know the answer right away, but with problem solving abilities, you can get to the answer in your own way using those skills. And then another thing I want to make sure to try to implement, not implement, but to focus on with my students is communication skills. And that goes with the teaching as well. But being an effective communicator can get you very far. And that is definitely a skill that I want my students to develop, because they can take it with them in their future beyond the walls of my classroom. Thank you.